Yes, guys, welcome to Chasing Green Arrows. We are back for our Friday afternoon special. As always, I am joined by regular co-hosts, Mr. Dean Jones and Mr. Big Man Bakar. Big Man, first and foremost, how you doing, mate?
Hi, Johnny. Hi, Dean. Hello and welcome to All This and News. I'm doing well. How about you? We just sat here a week before the Game Week 1 deadline. Things are finally heating up. It's getting closer. We're getting closer to our final structures, our final teams. I currently have like 9 to 10 players who are close to being locked in. But apart from that, it's those 4 or 5 players which will make all the difference. And they're basically the ones that will give me sleepless nights over the next few days.
Love that. Dean, mate, how are you? I'm kind of like, I feel like Big Man in terms of players locked, like similar percentage or maybe around 10 of my 15. But at the same time, one bit of news can change everything. Solanke signs for Spurs might change my decision on Son. That might then mean I go Salah. That might mean I go not Jota and not Trent. The knock-on effect of just one transfer can be huge, and information is king.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the fact that if Solanke's in by the start of the season, will I still want Son? That's a good point. We'll see how that transfer opens up in the next 24 hours or so. I thought a striker would be the last piece that Tottenham actually got in. But clearly they've just decided that they need some competition up there, that they haven't got enough threat. And so obviously trying to negotiate around Solanke has become really key to them. I don't know I'd necessarily want Solanke, but it's obviously something new to consider for us in the game. And that's interesting. British Dean needs a lamp. Yeah, look, it's 5 o'clock. Like, I don't do any other recording at 5 o'clock. I do actually have a lamp, British, literally, but I'm waiting I need to get an actual proper ring light is what I need. That's what you mean there. I need a ring light. In fact, I'll go and get one this weekend. Yeah, thanks, CH. Yeah, I'll use all that money that comes in today on the super chats. I'll use that to buy the ring light. But yeah, the natural lighting in this room is terrible. It's one of those like ceiling fans, that have a light in the middle of them, and it's so dim. So I've got like the glare of the screen, and I've got this lamp, but yeah, it's not ideal. But anyway, my team's okay. I will admit I've already ditched Muniz. He lasted one show.
But you've ditched him in exchange for Smith Rowe, right?
The reason is it came off the show the other day, lads, and obviously this links in with what we're doing today. I was watching the Fulham game, and obviously Smith Rowe scored, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll get him in it. And then for the rest of the day, I don't know why, I was just had Salah in my head. I must have seen something on social media, like subconsciously he got into my head, because I spent the next 24 hours just trying to figure out how to get Salah into my team.
No.
And I am now at the point where I'm 90% sure I'm going Salah and Haaland.
Wow.
I think I'm going to do it. Because he is fitting into this system, because he is actually playing reasonably well. I spoke to a friend of mine the other day who supports Liverpool, who's like watching the pre-season games much closer than I would be. Yeah, I watch the pre-season games, but I find them hard to properly absorb when you're not like totally into the team. And he's totally won over by Arne Slot. He says, look, the players seem to absolutely love him. He's no nonsense. He said, this made me laugh. He said, it actually feels like a bit of a fresh air from Klopp. Even though I loved him, he can be a bit of a little drama queen. And I feel like Slot's fixing a few things. And I was like, there was also that thing at the end of the last season where Salah and Klopp had a bit of a friction between them and stuff like that. Maybe it was affecting him. So I was like, do you know what? I'm bringing him in. Salah is in the San Diego Rifles.
Oh, we'll have to poll that. Will you own both Salah and Haaland? Yes or no? Baka, what's your take on Salah? And are you likely to own him? Like, what chances of you owning him? I'm pretty much unlikely to own him, I think.
Salah? Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to have both Haaland and Salah. I'm going to pick one or the other. And currently I'm leaning towards Haaland.
You're not going without Haaland, Baka. Come on. You tease. You're not going without Haaland. Not in a month of Sundays. You're not going without Haaland.
It's unlikely because I fear him too much. But to be very honest, I generally like the Salah drafts more until I realize they don't have Haaland. So I just keep resorting back to Haaland. So, I mean, it's very likely that I go with just a Haaland draft, which is why it's sort of unlikely that I go with Salah, but I love the Salah drafts, man. Like I have a look at a Salah draft every single day, which does not have Haaland, and I just feel so jealous of it because it looks so strong on paper.
So we're going to show you that in the 4 drafts we're showing today. Stay tuned, guys. We're going to show you a Salah team, a Haaland team, a both team, and a neither team. And Big Man's put together 2 of those teams, including the Salah draft. So yeah, we'll dive into them very, very shortly. I guess a big headline of the day, guys, as we record this on Friday the 9th of August, seems to be Solanke. I'm keen to know, like, personally, I expected Levy to move quite late on this to try and get a little bit of money off and to go late in the window. I'm surprised it seems to be as advanced as it is right now. Dean, like, when does this move, if it's happening, likely go through? And how do we think Solanke then works for game week 1, 2? Like, if the move goes through in the next couple of days, there's a good chance he's in the squad game week 1 against Leicester, because remember, that's the Monday night Spurs play Leicester. If it goes through middle of next week or end of next week, then yeah, you can probably go, oh, it'll be Kulusevski number 9 against Leicester. But even if he's in the squad, he's probably not going to start. Are we thinking when will the deal go through and when will he start is the question, I guess.
Honestly, as I said at the top, I didn't think this was one that they would prioritise for right now. I wrote a piece about 2 weeks ago after speaking to a really good Tottenham contact who I see is all over the Solanke stuff today. And he said, look, from what I'm hearing, they do want a striker, but they're going to see how everything plays out. And they'll probably bring in another creative type forward and a defensive player and then do the striker last. And it'll probably be Levy fashion, take it to the wire, and then sign someone the day before or on the day of deadline. But about 2 months ago, Solanke properly came onto the radar and he's kind of crept up and up and up. And it turns out it's not just kind of like his goal-scoring traits that they like. It's the way he presses from the front. They really like his style of chasing things down and triggering a press and setting the tone of the team. And obviously, he had a 65 million release clause at Bournemouth. So then I was told, look, they won't pay 65 million. Expect them to go in at 50 million. It turns out they're going to pay 57 million pounds for Dominic Solanke. Look, that's a lot of money. Is Dominic Solanke worth 57 million pounds? Do you know what? It's been a very weird summer. We have barely seen any transfers on that level this summer. To be honest, there haven't been that many transfers that are above like 30 million pounds this summer. It's been a bit of a tight summer. I think football's kind of had a bit of a squeeze. Maybe it's because the Saudis haven't been throwing money around so much that there's not the domino effect. Maybe it's because of PSR. I don't know, but they want to get this Solanke deal done so much that they're paying a hell of a lot of money here to get him through in time for the new season. If you're spending close to 60 million pounds on a striker, I find it hard to believe he's not starting the season. I find it very hard to believe.
Yeah, because otherwise, Levy must be like, oh, if we go later in the window, we might save a few million, but then we don't have him game week 1, 2, and 3. And obviously, game week 1, 2, and 3 are really important for Spurs. Get off to a good start.
Absolutely.
They've got Leicester, Everton. Baka, how does the Solanke move affect your decision? Not just on him, but on other Spurs assets. Like, what do Son owners do? What do Kulusevski owners do? I own both of those guys. And what's your take with the 7.5 Solanke game week 1, knowing he wouldn't be nailed for 90 minutes if he was to sign early next week, but probably in the matchday squad?
Yeah, I think it's enough to put me off any reasonable thoughts of owning Kulusevski. I just think it's too risky. Yeah. And even if you're sort of owning Kulusevski, there's every chance that Solanke's sort of available by game week 2. So it's a very short-term sort of thinking. If I was on a free hit, then it's something. But when it comes to Solanke, I think at 7.5, he'd be a great asset. I'm sort of hoping that the transfer goes ahead before the start of the season, so we definitely know whether or not he's going to be available in game week 1. And if he is, then I think I'll go ahead with him. I mean, Spurs strikers, they've been very kind to me in the past. I had Richarlison last season. He did really well.
Yeah, he did.
And at 7.5, nailed striker. I mean, there's a debate whether or not he ends up on penalties, but I think he's a fantastic option. Yeah, I even without penalties, I still think he's a fantastic option. I think there's a chance for sure. I won't sort of outrightly dismiss it because it's not as if Son has an amazing record. His record and Solanke's record is actually similar. And Son doesn't exactly sort of strike me as the kind of guy who would sort of definitely wanted to be on penalties, because even in the Asian Cup, he gave up a penalty to Wang, if I remember correctly. So it could happen. I won't outrightly dismiss it, but at 7.5, if he's starting the season, he'd be in my team. But
Yeah.
the problem, I'm not sure whether or not that transfer will go ahead by that time, and whether we will have.
It'll go ahead by then. Like, I think this transfer will be tied up by the weekend. Like, they've really moved forward from it. My contact's clearly watching the show. He said they're not, all that money that you're talking about, they're not paying it all in advance, so that's why it can happen. So they've clearly done a good structuring of this one on Solanke, and from what he's saying here, they'll try to do it today or tomorrow, and really get this one over the line. Like, that shows how serious they are, and like we say, there's got to be some intent there around game week 1 if you're pushing for that right now. And I think that would really excite the Tottenham fan base as well, to have somebody in there, going into the new season thinking, oh, we've got to back up Son for goals as Richarlison. It wasn't enough. And Ange Postecoglou knew that wasn't enough. He wanted not necessarily competition, just a new forward. So that's going to be interesting to see if Solanke is the man. As I say, £60 million or close to overall package, I personally think is too much in this market for Dominic Solanke. But if you are paying, say, like Chai says, 30 million up front, that's not too bad. That's actually not too bad, and I can understand that Spurs would feel that they've got a good one there, especially because he's homegrown. Like, for Tottenham this season and their squad build, homegrown is really important to them and the makeup of their squad. So they'll be happy with that. Is he a Kane replacement? I don't think so. I don't know if I see Solanke replacing all those goals Harry Kane used to get, but at least he's better than anything else they had to offer up there last season.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. Thank you for adding all your input in the chat. We won't get into it now because we'll move on to the 4 of our drafts, but interesting to know. Let us know your comments in the chat. Would Toney have been a better buy for Spurs here and now, knowing he would have been half the price, possibly, or?
But he wouldn't have been. That's the thing, because Toney would have been at least £40 million up front. So actually,
would he have been up front? Yeah,
it would have been up front.
Yeah, but do you not think last day of the window you get Toney for 35 and then he's close to half price? I.e., Brentford has to sell him, or they go.
Solanke's better than Toney, isn't he?
I think for Spurs, and
there's a debate to be had.
Toney's a better player. I would rather, if I was a Spurs fan, I'd rather have Toney, knowing I think it complements Son more. I think he's more similar of a profile of a Kane, i.e. wants to drop deep and involve others. And I think we know that Kane-Son combo was so good. Toney's obviously older, and for someone like Levy who wants to protect his asset, financially, maybe Solanke does make sense, even though you're spending more. But Toney, for me, would have been the pick.
I agree. I think Solanke would have, Toney would have fitted better in the system, but I still think Solanke will do well as well. So I don't think it's a bad purchase. I think Solanke will get a reasonable number of goals to make the transfer justifiable. I think it'll be a good signing.
So who's a better pick? If Toney stays at Brentford and Solanke is at Tottenham, who's the better pick? If someone was like, oh, I've got space to pick one of these two in my team, who's the guy to go for?
I think both are fantastic picks, to be very honest.
Are they the same price, Backer? What's Toney? Is he 7.5 as well?
I think they are.
He's 7.5 as well. Yeah. But I guess there's a counter argument to be made that Toney, it's basically the big fish, small pond argument to be made, that he'll be the talisman, etc. And that may not necessarily be the case with Solanke, but I think both will score reasonably well. And simply because Spurs have the better run of fixtures to begin with at the start, you tend to go with Solanke. I think the answer to this is fixtures dependent. And when Brentford have a better run after game week 5, you might as well then resort to Toney.
Yeah. If he's on pens, then maybe, we'll talk about ourselves in a minute, but if you're doing a non-Haaland team, if you can get in Toney and Solanke and maybe Isak or something like that, and that's the makeup of your front three, there's new options, I guess, that could open up.
Yeah. Interesting. If Spurs had gone for Toney, he'd definitely be on pens over Son, and we don't know if Solanke will be. Let's move on to our 4. Maybe we go to 4 drafts, guys. Your wishes are command with polls, by the way. It was asked by Mark in the chat. Can we do a poll on AI rating? We did that. I think about 80% of you don't use AI ratings, and 20% do. Darren has sent his entire team for us to review mid-show, which is tricky, Darren. But as you've generously sent a super chat, your wishes are
my ring light, mate. That's my fiver.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll just touch on it. Your team, it looks good. Rashford straight away just goes, oh, okay, that's a differential, but maybe. And Bob as well. I also prefer Muniz to Wood, but you've got Haaland and Salah covered. No Nkunku in there. Most have got Nkunku. You've got a Bailey. But yeah, it looks like a very good team. I like the fact you've managed to get Gvardiol and Saliba and still have a good balanced team. Baka, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good team. I think I'd have some concerns owning Bailey, Rashford, and Bob at the same time, particularly Bailey and Bob, with some concerns over their minutes. Bailey should start this season, but like Aston Villa may sign a new player, and then Europe will kick in. At that point, whether or not Bailey will be nailed, we don't know, right? And Bob should start the season as well, but when Foden is back, I'm not entirely sure how many minutes he's going to get as well. It seems like a reasonable team. It's not too far away from the template. It's decent.
What's your take on Rodgers, Daka? Instead of Bailey, you save like 1.5 million if you go Rodgers. What do we think of Rodgers' minutes versus Bailey's minutes?
I think they're similar. I don't think there's a huge difference. So you might as well save the money, because I think Rodgers is likely to start the season behind Watkins. And if he does, and let's say if you expect him to play 70 minutes every game, which I think is a reasonable expectation at the start of the season, I think he should be fine for the first 2 or 3 games. If he scores in the first fixture, he's going to shoot up in price when people realize that Aston Villa have an attacking mid. At that price, who's playing regularly, he's going to rise in price. And I think it might lead to some of the 5.5 million midfielders dropping in price quickly as well. That would be an issue.
Worth noting that by game week 3, Aston Villa have an amazing run of fixtures. And those that can't stretch to Ollie Watkins for whatever reason, because they're on Haaland and Isak or Solanke, having Aston Villa attack cover for those that don't go Watkins might be something you look at. And I ruled out Rodgers earlier this season because I was like, come game week 1, he won't be starting. But the more and more we watched them pre-season and the little activity they have in the transfer market for a second striker, a João Felix or whoever, you look at it and go, actually, he's probably going to be a starter. Of course, thank you for reminding us to hit the like button, hit the notification bell. And guys, do subscribe to Chasing Green Arrows. Thank you so much to everyone that watched Monday's show and heard our rally cry to subscribe to get to 8,000 subs. And you absolutely did that. So thank you to every one of you that subscribed recently. Thank you to all of our long-term subs. And stay tuned for some awesome content, not only for the rest of pre-season, but going into the new season. We've got very exciting plans here at Chasing Green Arrows. So do follow our journey by hitting that subscribe and like button right here, right now. Dean, your take on that Aston Villa attack? Watkins is expensive, but great. Rodgers and Bailey are alternative picks.
Yeah, Rodgers is better pick than I actually realised, to be honest. I've seen people talking about him, and I be honest, he wasn't really closely on my radar, and I thought he would be one that would fade. I guess kind of how I've had Diallo and Bob in pre-season, but I'd seen more of those just because Man City and Man United were more on my radar for being over in America and stuff. But I've made a point in the past few days of looking into Rodgers more in terms of performance levels, in terms of expectations. He sounds like a really promising pick. Like a friend of mine who supports Villa, but also like analyzes them as well for his job. He's adamant Rodgers is going to get plenty of minutes. So I think, Big Man was talking about having Rodgers the other day, and I was like, surely he won't keep him in his team. But after digging deeper, I can totally understand actually why you would have him. What price is Rodgers at the moment?
He's 5 million. That's the thing, right?
Yeah,
at 5 million, you don't get much better. If it was 5.5, I mean, he wouldn't have appealed as much. He still would have appealed, but not as much. At 5 million, it's a crazy price. But do you guys have enough confidence in him to go with him as a 7th attacker? I still think I'd have him as my 8th attacker as opposed to the 7th, just in case if he ends up getting dropped after, let's say, 2 subpar performances in the first 2 or 3 weeks.
I could see that, to be honest. Sorry, just to address something in the chat. British says, I think Mitoma and Minte are the same price. They're not the same price as Rodgers. Minte is 5.5 and Mitoma is 6.5. Minte, I watched a Brighton friendly against QPR the other day. Minte was unbelievable.
He looked like a wing back in that game, though. I mean, he wasn't
right
a wing back. He's so advanced. But they played a back forward. 3, didn't they?
Yeah, I think he'll be right side of the attack.
Yeah.
But after watching the game, I was like, what are Brighton fans make of this? Is he in the lineup? And they all seem pretty certain that Minte will start the season for Brighton on that right side. And honestly, he was so good. And it was like in every single aspect. Like, no wonder Eddie Howe didn't want to lose this guy. Like, he really didn't want them to sell him. Had a really good season out on loan last year. He could be, honestly, one of those guys that we end up wanting quite a lot. And obviously, Brighton always having it. Maybe he's the new Solly March or something like that, like a 5.5 that, doesn't perhaps seem that sexy at the start, but in the end, you just can't resist him.
Yeah, back on.
The fixtures are hard because Man United and Arsenal, aren't they? Because they play Man United and Arsenal in the first 3 games. I guess that's slightly off-putting with Brighton.
But are they going to be one of these Brighton teams that scores against anyone? I don't know.
It's probably.
Because they've got the players
really
to, haven't they?
It's tricky. And if you're starting with João Pedro as well, then it becomes even more trickier because you don't want to double up when Brighton have those fixtures in the first 3, especially that Arsenal fixture is a bit tricky. But I really like him. I have my eyes on him. If he looks good again, then I think he could be an option for game week 1 because historically he did really well in the Eredivisie last season as well. So I think he could actually do really well, to be very honest. At 5.5, he may be the best pick. It's just the slight concern over his minutes. But actually, since over the course of preseason, he's been playing so well that I'm not sure whether there should be any concern over his minutes. I think he'll play in game week 1 for sure.
Agreed. When I off call, you make a really good point as well. These are 4 good options. But when I saw Minte in that first Brighton friendly and he scored in it, I was like, he's going to be first sub for Brighton. We're going to get loads of awesome 30-minute cameos. He's one for the watch list. As pre-season's gone on, you're going, he's scoring every game and he's getting the minutes. Like, Solly March isn't back either. He's the answer to their right side at Brighton. And as Baka said, like proper good season last year. Under Slot, by the way, at Feyenoord. I think he got close to 20 goals. Newcastle were forced to sell because of their financial restrictions. So, budget midfielders is definitely something to look at. The big question, if you're going for a 5.5 mid, whether that's Smith Rowe, Minte, or a 5 million Bob or Rodgers, is that your 7th or your 8th attacker? And I guess that comes down to whether or not you've got Salah and Haaland in your team. If you've got Salah and Haaland in your team, they might be a 7th attacker and you have a 4.5 on the bench. But if you're going with, say, just one of Haaland or Salah, there's a very good chance you could have 8 attackers at 5.5 or above because you'll have the money to do that. Is that a good or bad thing? I don't know. Do you want bench points? No, you don't. Do you want a good bench option if you've got a player injured or suspended and you don't use a transfer because you're looking to roll more transfers this season because of the new rule? Then maybe having an 8 good attacker at 5.5 or above is optimal. I'm still not sure. But let's have a look at these drafts, shall we? We've done 4 drafts on today's show. If you're enjoying today's show, hit the buttons. Do like, do subscribe. So what are we kicking off with then? We've got 4 teams. Are we going to kick off with a Haaland, a Salah, and none of either or both? Let's have a look. This looks like it's a no Haaland, no Salah.
It's a nomium draft.
Which you put together, have you, Baka? Is this one of yours?
Yes,
it's one of yours because João Pedro, Armstrong, Isak, Bruno, Son, Eze, and Saka all have penalties. 7 of your 8 attackers.
That's so me, right? And it's just a ridiculously good squad, except the fact that he doesn't have 2 of the most reliable captaincy options in the game. I mean, it looks unbelievable, doesn't it?
It does. I tell you what, you've got no bench fodder. Like, you've got 8 good attackers. And even your defense, Barco's 4 million, but you'd always be benching Barco and Konza pretty much.
Yeah, of course.
Which is fine.
And they can cover Porro and Saliba in some of their tougher fixtures, but overall, this draft looks really good. And I'm sort of curious to see how it would perform. There's no chance I pick this for my own team, but still, it looks super strong. So I'd be curious to see where it goes. Alisson in goal as well, by the way, for Liverpool's fixtures. So, I mean, it should do pretty well.
Yeah, captaincy as well. You've still got Son, and you've still got Isak, and you've still got Saka. Like, I'm guessing if you go after the first 5 game weeks, and you might even game week 1, you'd captain Isak or Saka. Game week 2,
Game week 2 will be an issue.
It
will be an issue, but Son with Everton at home, yeah.
Game week 3, Saka, Brighton at home.
Game week 3, Saka. Game week 4, game week 4 is tricky.
Who's Bruno
go for in game week 4, actually? In game week 4?
Has Bruno
Bruno's
got a good
got
game week 4?
Southampton away, possibly. Well, Eze has Leicester at home in that game week.
I mean, you can have fun with captaincy if you don't go Haaland and Salah, because it's not just a case of going, oh, it'll be Son and Isak. Like, you could go Eze game week 4, because why not?
But the issue in game week 4 is that Spurs and Arsenal are basically playing each other, right? And that's a week where Liverpool have Nottingham Forest at home, Man City have Brentford at home. So this is game week 4 will be. It could potentially mean a lot of trouble for this team, basically.
Yeah, Dean,
With no
thoughts on this
Salah
team,
or Haaland.
this approach?
I mean, I can't imagine there's too many people in the game that are actually going to go ahead with this plan of not having either of them. And I think, the scariest aspect of it would just be when you analyse the fixtures that Salah and Haaland have in those first couple of game weeks, knowing that Salah could bang against Ipswich, and then Haaland can too. So that's basically the biggest fear, I think. And in terms of the actual team, it's fine. And over the course of the season, obviously, it could pay off because we don't know yet what we're going to get from Salah and Haaland. And that kind of opens up the possibilities to having a stronger squad than rather having those elite assets. I just never in a million years would I go without either of them. I can't even bring myself to leave one of them out at the moment. That's the problem I've got with having
exactly.
The fear of missing out would just be too much for me. I literally wouldn't be able to handle it.
Yeah, let alone 2. No Liverpool attack, no City attack.
Exactly. And that's the thing with the Liverpool attack. This is one of the reasons that led me back to Salah. I don't know how to get to it. And this draft kind of proves it. Like, you don't know how to get into that Liverpool attack. And to have none of it scares me too much.
Jota the slaughter, mate. Jota the slaughter. 7.5 million. And you could get Foden in this team as well, by the way. Like, it could be Foden and Jota very easily if you wanted to cover those attacks. I mean, look, it's not for me either. Let's do a. We're going to go through these 4 drafts, and we want your input in the chat. And we're going to do a poll. Like, are you going for neither? Are you going for both? Are you going for Haaland only? Are you going for Salah only? Before we see the results of that poll, both of you guys, what do you think will be the most popular? I think Haaland only might be the most popular. I can't work out if it's Haaland only or both as the popular pick.
No.
But where's the poll
it will be Haaland plus Salah for sure.
Haaland and Salah combined will be
I've seen some content creators on X. They've had similar polls, and Salah only and Haaland only drafts are relatively close. Haaland only is second in line. Salah only is third.
Yeah.
And no Salah and Haaland is actually fourth in terms of popularity.
Ooh.
But Salah and Haaland, the overwhelming majority of people tend to have both because it's probably too risky. They believe it's too risky to leave either of them out.
Dean, how do you feel about being so template?
Well, listen, you two weren't going to pick Haaland at all on game week 1, so I was the only one who was going to have him in my team at that point, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's way too much money." And now everybody's like, "Yeah, absolutely can't miss out on this guy." My team has definitely turned more template week by week, but I'll still have differentials around. The thing about having Salah and Haaland is that it will force me to make choices around those 5.5 million players. And that's where I think you're really going to have to get smart and really be tuned into the predicted lineups, to the form, all of these different aspects of the game. Because it's almost lazy to now at this point go Salah and Haaland, but it's not wrong. Like, it's just the easiest guarantee, as close as you can get to a guarantee of output in those early weeks. Everybody else, even Jota, is a risk.
Yeah.
Can we have the Salah and Haaland draft on screen so that we can, discuss?
So this one is catered for 9%. 9% are saying neither. But let's get the Salah and Haaland, which caters for 47% of the chat.
Yeah. Right. So,
hey, this is my team. It's not my team. Sorry, it's got Salah in it. But I put this team together. Yeah. This is my team with Salah, I guess.
Yeah. So basically, it looks good. But
What's it not got?
It's
Where's the sacrifice here? The sacrifice here
the sacrifice is one premium defender or one premium midfielder. Basically, it's basically in midfield. This team has, for example, instead of Kulusevski, you can potentially have someone like a Gordon or a Bruno or an Odegaard in some of the other teams.
Yeah.
And you can potentially have a better, let's say, a defender than Hall or Mikalenko. You can possibly have, let's say, Munoz or even Guardiola for that matter. I don't think the squad is too weak, but there are 2 or 3 issues. First is I think the defense is relatively weak. The third defender especially, it's questionable, and then not having an 8th attacker to rotate with Smith Rowe is also a potential issue. I would not feel that comfortable playing Smith Rowe week in, week out.
Right, which you'd have to if you got Ladapo, who won't get any minutes.
Exactly.
But you could argue this could be Smith Rowe rotating with defender 4, because you could have Smith Rowe and Mikalenko rotating, for example, or Smith Rowe and Hall.
But that's the point, right? Mikalenko and Hall are already locked in rotation. They're already locked in rotation, right? So, I assume only one of Mikalenko.
But you could play a 4-4-2 some weeks.
Yeah, but Everton's fixtures or Newcastle's fixtures from a defensive point of view are not good enough to have a defender playing week in, week out. That's what I'm suggesting, right? So the 11th player is always going to be weak.
Yeah, okay. Well, Barco, you could chuck his name in the mix sometimes. If a rotation between Smith Rowe, Barco, Hall, and Mikalenko, you only need 2 of the 4 to start each week.
And even the 6.5 midfielder is... I don't hate it, but even the 6.5 midfielder is questionable. So, like, there are 2 or 3 picks that are, like, questionable, which doesn't exactly...
You compromise on a keeper as well. Like, there's only enough budget to go 1 4.5, not 2.
I think the keeper's fine, to be very honest. I don't think that's a huge issue. Yeah, it's honestly fine. Whether you go Fleck and Henderson, I don't think there's much between them.
We'll show you our teams on Monday, by the way, guys, and our take on goalkeepers. Like, if it's a set and forget premium, which I think one of us might go for, 2 4.5s, which another one will go for, maybe 1 4.5 and a 4, which one of us will. So stay tuned for Monday's show where we'll reveal our teams. Dean, what's your take on this shape?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a similar dilemma. Obviously, now that I'm tinkering with Salah, Haaland teams, I can understand the issues that arise. And personally, like, what I've done basically is I haven't obviously gone near Trent all summer anyway, but I would get like maybe Gabriel in or something like that at 6 million rather than have Trent, just to open up something else. But it's very difficult to know what to do in the middle. I mean, at the moment, I've kind of got Son in there to kind of complement in the middle, to have him alongside Salah. You know, if Solanke joins, then that might change. But it is really difficult to nail those like 6.5 million ones, and that's what I find like. So the other 3 so I've got Salah and Son in mine, and then I've got like Smith Rowe, Gibbs White, who's just kind of a holder at 6.5. But I do think that Gibbs White is being overlooked. And Bob, I've got as the other player who we'll see how he does at the weekend and things like that. But it's so difficult. Like Nkunku, maybe, but Chelsea are absolute train wreck at the moment. Chelsea relying so heavily on Cole Palmer and Nkunku coming into this season. Like, if those guys don't carry that rest of that team on their shoulders, then they're in big, big trouble. The way things are going. Smith Rowe, like Big Man says, some weeks he'll be a great pick, but you're not going to want Smith Rowe in there every week. The fact that Fulham, beyond the first one at Old Trafford, seem to have a relatively nice start to the fixtures means you could probably take a punt on him a lot of the time. Kulusevski, I would expect most people to drop out of that rotation and find another 6.5. And then even in the defence, like I've got Livramento. But obviously, until Trippier goes, you can't be certain he's playing. And people keep asking me,
is Trippier going? What's the deal there?
It's hard to go into because, like with Trippier, a lot of it's to do with his personal life and personal issues as to why he's leaving Newcastle. So, like, the genuine feeling was that Kieran Trippier is leaving Newcastle, but it's more for personal reasons in his life, and because of the things that are going on, he was expected to like leave the country. Basically, is what the vibe was. And I was like, oh right, okay, fair enough. Like, if I don't need to go any deeper into that. But okay, if that's the hunch. But then Eddie Howe comes out with comments about Trippier, and he's been linked with West Ham and things like that. You're like, okay, well, he might still be around in game week 1. And if he's still around, is he really going to be not involved at all? So I'll dig into that. I'll try to get a good update for you all actually on Monday as to whether Kieran Trippier is likely to be at Newcastle. I'll speak to my contact before then and get a gauge on it. But then you've got this same issue. I mean, up front, instead of having Ladapo, Ross Stewart seems to be a reasonable 4.5 pick. Might actually get some minutes potentially. So, like at the moment, I've got him in as my 4.5 forward. There's no right or wrong here. Like you've just got to accept that if you're going Haaland and Salah, your weakness is that you're kind of fielding 10 players a week. That's how I feel. I'm basically playing with 10 men so that I can go with Salah and Haaland, and the other player is like kind of a bonus.
Effectively, if you look at the same draft, and if you let's say downgrade Salah to Saka, you get 2.5 million, right?
Yeah.
You can use that 2.5 to let's say upgrade a Mykolenko to possibly Guardiola.
What was that?
And
Salah
maybe
to Son, you said, Baka?
Salah to Saka. Or Son for that matter.
Yeah. Well, let's do that because
Right?
we've got let's show the Haaland team. I'm pretty sure that's what my Haaland team is. Let's show that.
Yeah, exactly. So if you sort of downgrade Salah to Saka, you can then use the funds to potentially upgrade a 4.5 million defender to Guardiola, and not just that, potentially upgrade Kulusevski to someone like a Gordon or Bruno, and the latter just seems more strong. I mean, would you rather go with Salah, Kulusevski, Mykolenko, or would you rather go with Saka, Guardiola, and Gordon or Bruno? The latter is much, much, much more stronger.
It is stronger.
See, that's the issue. Yeah, that's the issue with the Salah plus Haaland draft. Salah plus Haaland drafts. Yeah.
Unless Salah scores a hat-trick away at Ipswich on the first day of the season, in which case it all goes out the window. And that honestly is what I'm trying to gauge. Are Liverpool going to smash Ipswich on the first day of the season? They really might do.
I don't think they will, but I completely get it. And also, if you go Salah, you've also got a good captaincy option game week 2 and 4. He's got 2 good home games where you might want to back against Haaland for whatever reason. I mean, this team is close to my current team at the moment. One version of it, Christ. By the way, Sells started again for Forest last night. Guys, Sells is a brilliant 4.5 option. If you rotate him with Henderson, I can't believe so many are going 1 4.5 and 1 4.0 just to save $500,000. Like, if you go for both of them, you get 9 out of 10 home fixtures in the first 10 game weeks, and they're a good 9 home fixtures. Like, find the 0.5 and have both.
Gianni, Henderson rotates really well with Flecken as well. We mentioned that in some of our previous streams.
Yeah.
He rotates really well. Aren't you concerned with Miguel still there, though, that Sells might be 1 or 2 poor performances away from getting dropped because he wasn't good for Forest last season?
Oh,
That's
terrible.
why they have a new keeper.
Yeah, he's terrible. I expected,
right?
When Miguel signed, I was like, oh, Miguel's going to be number 1. But the last 2 friendlies, Miguel hasn't featured. So he's not starting. Like, sure, if Sells has a couple of shockers, he's out the team. But he's got to have those shockers first. And in that case, I probably wouldn't want him anyway. So I'm happy to punt that he doesn't have a shocker and keeps his spot. Like, there's a good chance I end up wildcarding by game week 6 anyway. But we know he's starting game week 1 Sells now. We didn't know that a week ago.
Yeah. I think the goalkeeper is terrible. Yeah. Go.
If you feel, Gianni, that Sells is like 1 or 2 poor games away from getting dropped, then why take the risk in a rotation, right? Might as well go Henderson Flecken.
No, I much prefer the Forest backline to the Brentford backline. Much prefer it. Yeah.
I don't think there's a huge difference, actually.
I just like the man. I like Nuno and his reputation for clean sheets. I like the fact that they've got defensive reinforcements. I fancy Nottingham Forest have a good start to the season.
Did you see their result yesterday?
No. Oh, Olympiacos. Was it? They won, didn't they?
Yeah, they won, but it's 4-3. It's like the most open game ever. I know, because I was thinking the same as you, and I saw the result when I got up this morning. I was like, oh.
I saw the Elanga goal. The Elanga goal was amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, Gianni, their underlying data under Nuno was actually impressive. They were 4th for XG conceded in that spell since Nuno took over. And it was a reasonable sample as well of around 20 games. Can you guess the number of clean sheets they had in that spell, though?
It was like 3 or 4. It was dreadful. But the XGC was brilliant, as you say.
Yeah, they were fourth for XGC. Dean, do you want to guess?
Oh, go
Was
on.
it 1?
Yeah.
It is one. It is one. One in like over 20 games. So it's unbelievable. That's how bad the keepers were, actually. It's nothing to say about the defense
as well, wasn't he?
Turner was shocking. Sells was shocking. And there were plenty of games that I remember from memory where they actually conceded goals where keeper made direct errors. Like they literally passed the ball to the attacker and the attacker scored in an empty net. I remember goals like those, right? And that's what happened. That is why their defensive data was good, but the keepers were shocking. So that's something which I have at the back of my mind while picking a Forest keeper in particular.
Yeah, it's a fair point. I'm shocked that Sales is going to start game week 1, but the fact of the matter is he is. And goalkeeper clangers don't happen that regularly. So to say he's going to get a clanger in the opening couple of games, it's even though he's crap, it's still unlikely. Like I think he probably doesn't. But yeah, do I rate him as a keeper? No. Do I think he's a good FPL pick game week 1 because he rotates well with Henderson and I'll probably wild card early anyway? Yeah.
What if
I think a more pertinent point to sort of mention here is that if you're picking a 4.5 and 4.0, then don't pick Sells because then he could get dropped and you might end up without a keeper.
Agree. Go Hendo all day long or Flecken.
Yeah. Just a quick one before we do the super chat. Nottingham Forest have been looking at signing Sam Johnston from Crystal Palace.
Oh.
And if they do that, he's number 1. Like they're signing a number 1.
How many keepers do they want?
I don't know, but I don't. And I heard this a couple of weeks ago. I was like, Forest was still looking at 4 players 2 weeks ago, and I was like, where? And they ruled it off. One of them was a goalkeeper, and I was like, what do you mean goalkeeper? Okay. They're like, oh yeah, they think they can get Sam Johnston out of Crystal Palace, and now like we're seeing like that he's going to be leaving Crystal Palace, and I'm like, well, that might change things a little bit. That might give me I mean, obviously, you are going to be a bit worried every week. So he's going to have competition with about 4 other goalkeepers to get the
Poor
shirt.
Matt Turner, he's left Arsenal from Arsenal number 3 to Forest number 4.
Yeah, I know. But
honestly, Sam Johnson isn't leaving Palace to go be a number 2 anywhere. Like he's going to get a Southampton or a Forest. And Ramsdale's another one that's going to move. So again, I
think those guys could still become good options. Yeah, whether it's in time for the start of the season, I can't be totally sure.
Yeah, okay. Darren says to own Haaland, is Jota a good cover for Salah? Well, let's talk a little bit about Diogo Jota. He'll start game week 1, but there's a very good chance he doesn't start game week 2, 3, 4, 5. Like he's either getting 60 minutes or 30 minutes most games. If you're all right with that, and you know when you buy Jota that there's a chance he's getting 60 or 30, then sure, he's a good pick. Because when he's on the pitch, his points per minute are always up there. He's so good. And against Ipswich on the opening game, knowing he's going to start, although he could get hooked early, I think he's a good punt. But you've got to be willing to use a transfer on him early. So depending on your strategy, there's a chance I start the season with Jota. And I know what I'm getting myself into. You don't play well game week 1, mate, and you ain't playing game week 2. You play well game week 1 and you score, and there's a very good chance you keep the spot and you play game week 2 and 3. It's between him and Darwin for the number 9 shirt. I'm really tempted on Jota, and I'm really happy, guys. Jota in the last 2 preseason games, he's hit the post against Arsenal, and in the other game, I think he got 2 FPL assists. If he very easily could have scored goals in those games. He looked really good. He had a 45 and a 60, I think. I'm glad he ain't been scoring, or everyone would want him, because everyone would go, I can't get Salah. I can save 5 million and still have a Liverpool attacker that I know starting game week 1. There's a chance he ends up in my team, but it's a high risk call. That Backer, you won't. I'm guessing you don't love that move.
I don't hate it either.
That's reassuring. I thought you were going to hate that.
Yeah. No, I don't actually, because if he does well again, or if he just looks impressive again, I don't hate the idea. Liverpool have a really good run of fixtures, and if you think it all comes down to your reading of X minutes, right? Yeah. So if you think that he's going to start the first 2 or 3 fixtures, then he's one of the best assets in the game to own, right? Now, I may view it differently, and I may not be as convinced regarding you for minutes, but if you have the conviction regarding his minutes, then go for him by all means. I think he's a fantastic option when he plays.
Yeah. Dean, the problem is game week 2 and 3 minutes, Arne Slot probably doesn't know if Jota's going to start. It all probably depends on what he sees from the others on the training ground, Darwin, recovery, Gakpo, but also how he plays game week 1. You need him to play game week 1 well, or he's probably not starting game week 2.
Yeah, so I've just got totally distracted. As you started talking then, I've just got like a Twitter alert from a journalist in France who I have notifications on because he's pretty good. Fabrice Hawkins is his name. He says Pedro Neto is set to sign for Chelsea. Talks
Shut
in the
up.
final stages between Chelsea and Wolves. Player wants to join Chelsea. Agreement in
What?
principle.
What? I love that move so much.
I
Come
mean,
on.
Honestly, I've been like tracking Neto and like all the talk has been like he does want to come to London. Tottenham and Arsenal both really keen. Chelsea haven't been in this conversation at all. Well, they have. They've been in the background. They've liked Neto for a while, but there was no expectation really that Neto would end up at Chelsea. Man City have also been having a look at Neto, but here go Chelsea again. At least they're
I'm
signing a
tweeting
player
that.
that we've actually heard of, mate. So that's a start. He doesn't improve the defence, but that's a good signing. I mean, it has a knock-on effect because that means that there's more unrest in the Chelsea side. But Pedro
Where
Neto,
does he play? Is he, because he can play, like, he's a wide man, but Chelsea don't need a wide man. Chelsea need a 9.
this is the thing. So he's
Does
going
he
to
play
now
up
go.
front for Chelsea?
He's going to have to. He's going to have to. Would he be? He's talked quite highly of Raheem Sterling. Like Sterling seems like he's set to play on the left, doesn't he?
Yeah, Madueke's had a really good preseason on the right. And
Yeah, I was going to
could be
mention
on the right.
Madueke. So where would Neto fit in? Is he going to be backup? I'm sure he's not moving just to be backup.
Yeah, it's Fabrizio Romano now backing it up, says Chelsea are in advanced talks, negotiations taking
God.
place. He's one of the main targets
Happening.
for the winger position. So this
It's
is a live one. And yeah, so what's Neto's value in the game at the moment?
Is he 7 million, I'd guess? 7 million
No,
mid?
I don't think so. He can't be 7 million. Surely not.
6.5?
6.5 at
I
best.
think he might be a
At
6.5,
best.
yeah.
He is
Which-
he is 6.5. Yeah, I just checked.
Yeah, so there we go.
I tell you what, 6.5 though.
But how do you
This
fit
would
in? How do you fit in Nkunku, Raheem Sterling, Nicholas Jackson? You just signed O'Meridian. You got Noni Madueke. You got Mikhailo Mudryk. Now you're getting in Pedro Neto.
Nico Jackson.
What are they doing? Like, how does that make it? Like, they need a striker. They need Osimhen. And actually, Matt Law was on a podcast, and he said that he's heard that the potential of a loan for Osimhen is still not out of the question.
Oh.
And I think that will be because they're currently stuck with Lukaku, and they've got to get Lukaku out, and he wants to go to Napoli. And obviously Osimhen wants to move. And if the PSG one doesn't open up, they've got to unlock something. So maybe that's why that comes back into the conversation. If Chelsea legitimately end up with Pedro Neto and Osimhen in their attack then next season, number one, I'm going to throw this laptop across the room. And number two, we've got a couple of new assets to consider.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of Neto. The concern is injuries, sure, but I'm a massive fan. Like, I think he's, even though we don't need someone of that profile, straight away I'm like, that is a wicked signing. Like, I don't get excited about Chelsea signings anymore. Often I'm like, who? Or what? Another keeper. But this one, like, you saw my reaction. That is a wicked signing for Chelsea, and Sterling can get in the bin anyway. Like,
well, it gets you excited, doesn't it? And I mean, Chelsea haven't made any exciting signings. The best signing this summer is Kieran Dewsbury Hall, who I don't think anyone
played in the Championship last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good player, but like no one's getting excited about that. So that sort of transforms the feel-good factor around the place. It doesn't solve the fact that the defence is still rubbish, but at least it's something. FPL focuses Sterling is in the bin. I don't know, because he's been talked up so highly. I totally understand
about
what
the
you're
England
saying.
team again, isn't he? He's like, oh, get back into the England mix now. Gareth's gone, and
yeah. But at Wolves, they will replace Neto. The intention has always been that if Neto goes, they'll replace him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. Rodrigo's had a really good pre-season at Wolves, and I think is worth having on the radar at 5.5 because I think Wolves are going to have a decent season, to be honest. But yeah, if he is going then imminently, then Wolves will immediately look to replace Neto.
yeah, okay, nice. So, Baka, final thoughts on this. Wait, did we do the Salah-only draft earlier? Yeah, we did the Salah.
We haven't.
Oh, we've not done this
covered
team yet.
We haven't covered this in detail. We mentioned that what the changes would be from a Salah team to a Saka team. So it's technically that, but we haven't really run
This is
through
our
this,
fourth one then,
as we
is it?
should.
This is the fourth one.
Yes, this is the fourth one.
okay.
And this is I think this is one of the strongest until the time you realize that it does not have Haaland. This is an unbelievably strong draft, and this is the draft I keep referring to. This is the one that I have a flirt with at some point in the day, but then I just go back to the Haaland draft. But I just think this draft is extremely well balanced. Look at that midfield, dude. Saka, Eze, Salah, and Nkunku, Bruno. And you have Isak. You can rotate Pedro and Armstrong, and in the defense you have Saliba, Trent, and Porro. It's an unbelievable team.
It is missing massively one player though, Pedro Neto.
That's it, right? Oh, I thought you were going to say Haaland.
It's hard because if you're going without Haaland, like this team, straight away you go, oh, you don't have any Man City attack cover. But what we know from Pep is Foden isn't going to be involved in the Community Shield, which means he ain't starting game week 1. And other than Foden, it's a bit underwhelming. Yeah, you could go Bob for a punt or you could go Gvardiol at the back, but there's no really sort of big name midfielder to back the Haaland absence. Would you consider going Foden and just benching him game week 1 backer, knowing in game week 2 he probably starts?
No, not at that price.
No.
For sure, not at that price. I don't think it's worth locking in a transfer when Saka has Wolves in game week 1. Son is Leicester and Everton in the first 2 weeks. Yeah. Why would you have a 9.5 million asset on the bench? It would make no sense for me.
Yeah.
So,
but would you be willing to go without Haaland or any Man City attack completely? The no Haaland drafts, for me, I would need Man City cover.
See, this is the problem that I have currently. I'm going to resort to Haaland, but it's probably going to be more out of FOMO. This team actually looks better to me, if I'm being very honest.
Fair play.
It does not have Haaland. That's the risk. Yeah.
I'm maybe similar. One thing I keep saying to myself, like, why am I just not squeezing in Salah and Haaland like Dean and like 48% of the chat? And I guess I've just not been happy with a single draft that has them both. And I think you're similar. Like it's one too many compromises. But yeah, maybe the Solanke news affects my decision on Son. And if I'm not going Son, maybe I do find money for Salah. That's something I've got to contemplate over the next few days.
Yes, Gianni, how I sort of view this, when you look at this team, I think this is close to being an ideal team. Then you move to Haaland draft, and it has one or two compromises that you can perhaps digest, right? And then when you move to Haaland and Salah draft, it has one too many compromises, like you suggested. So this is my school of thought at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Guys, on Monday we'll be showing you our teams, which is pretty fun. I'm well excited about that. And our teams will change a lot. There's no point in showing you our teams today or tomorrow or Sunday, because I think we're all going to be reacting to the final pre-season friendlies and the Community Shield. And pretty much every team plays their final pre-season friendly. Some have played them last night, some will go tonight, but most are playing Saturday, Sunday. And with that in mind, I think we're going to get a load of extra pieces of information, press conference quotes, the lot. So yeah, stay tuned for Monday's show. We will be live at 7 p.m. UK time. Do not miss that. Guys, do us all a favor and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. If you've enjoyed today's show, also hit the like button. If you're just tuning in, go back and watch the last hour. You won't regret it. It's been a really cool show. We've gone through big discussion points on Solanke, Haaland, Salah, and shown 4 teams. We've also reacted to the the Neto news. Any final thoughts from you guys? Dean, you first.
Oh, mate, I'm just trying to react to this Neto stuff now and try and get my head around what Chelsea are doing. I've just got a text through from someone saying, yep, they have decided they want a winger and a striker in before the end of the window. What do you mean? So don't rule out Osimhen coming into Chelsea and that we're making some last-minute tinkering to figure him. How much would Osimhen be in FPL? What would we be looking at? Osimhen in FPL at
10.
Chelsea?
10 on the nose. 10 on the nose, I reckon. Because Palmer's 10.5. He'll be a bit
plus
below.
Minus, 10.
Mate,
plus
that
minus.
would shake things up.
It really would.
That would really shake up a no Haaland or no Salah team if you suddenly had Osimhen coming in at 10 million below both of them.
Yeah. Mark said 8. Not a chance. Disrespectful, Mark.
We do have that. We sort of have a vacuum because from Watkins up to Haaland, there's no real forward that kind of stands out in that bracket. So it would actually be nice for the game as well.
Yeah, Jackson's 7.5, so Osman should be 8. Behave. These are different level. Right, we'll speak more about Osman on Monday. And guys, I'll speak more about these topics tonight. I'm going to stream at 7 o'clock, which was historically one of the CGA slots at 7 p.m. on a Friday night. So join me on the Gianni Mattici YouTube show Friday night live if you fancy it. As I said, if you're watching now and just tuned in, don't go anywhere. Go and watch the last hour. If you've watched for the last hour and you're looking for some more FPL content, I would love you to support one of our other chasers who's been live the last hour already today, and that is Holly Shand FPL. So if you fancy it, Holly is now live. Go over to Holly with a CGA raid. That'd be awesome. I'd love her to see in the chat that she's got a load of new watchers from Chasing Green Arrows. She'll be doing the same on her channel, back to Chasing Green Arrows at some point this season as well. So go watch Holly right here, right now on YouTube. I will hopefully see some of you later, and we'll see you on Monday for another live Chasing Green Arrows at 7 p.m. UK time. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.